Yep.
Okay.
And we are live. So I'm Dr. Chanda. You're Dr. Cartman, right?
Yes. You can call me
Which
Dr. Obari.
Dr. Obari. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Thank you so much for being on the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast. How are you?
Of course. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely a pleasure considering what we're going to be talking about today.
Hmm.
So, for those of you who are listening to the audio version, or if you're watching the video, I have my friend here, Dr. Cartman, Dr. Obari, who will be helping us to kind of dissect this Kanye documentary. But before we hop into that, you know that we start with a hot off the press segment. So for those of you who've been listening to this podcast for quite some time, the hot off the press segment is basically us talking about mental health in the culture and in the news. And so this week, I wanted to address a specific article that is relating to Black male suicide and how deaths have risen amongst Black men. In the article, basically correlated the deaths being associated with being bullied, racial discrimination, and a host of other things. And so, Dr. Cartman, as a Black male psychologist, I'm wondering what is your perspective on this?
No, it's a real problem. And it's something that we are addressing in the field.
Yeah.
And when I say addressing, I don't always think we do it well enough.
Mm,
Like addressing has meant panels and podcasts and discussions about it. What I
yeah.
think we need is much more grassroots, community-based interventions that look like creating space for Black men to gather, to heal, to share, to process, to unload, to relieve the burdens. I mean, we know
Yeah.
that everybody's going through a lot of stuff, and I think that it's important to have mental health spaces that are specific to the experiences people are having. So I
Mm,
think there needs to be targeted opportunities for Black men to talk about
yeah.
that, the Black male identity, the Black male space, the ways in which we have unique challenges, and to see each other experiencing them in the same way so that we don't feel alone, so that we don't think that everybody's got something figured out that we don't just because we scrolling all the day and we think that everybody's cool.
Yeah.
There's just a part of masculinity that has trained us to sort of keep stuff inside and to hold it
Mhm.
together and to posture like we're doing well. And the numbers, the suicide numbers are catching up to that.
Yeah, yeah. I love how you said like the things in podcasts and just panel discussions, like that's cool, but that's not really
Hmm.
getting to the root of the problem. I think
Yeah,
there's a huge difference between bringing awareness to something versus providing
absolutely.
intervention with
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And the conversation is good. We got to have the conversations because the awareness is
absolutely.
important,
Mm-hmm.
right? I appreciate the moment. We just, particularly us in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, really anybody, any caring adult that feels like they have a listening ear or a heart for people, needs to be creating space so that young
Yeah,
people can come and be mentored and, just be honest. We need space, particularly men need space where we can really be fully honest. Um, we call it the vulnerable, and I think vulnerable is a part of it. But
mm-hmm.
I lead with just be honest. Let's just keep it a buck, keep it
Yeah,
real for real, like keep it real for real. Like how you doing? And that's the space we need. We need a
mm-hmm.
space where you can honestly answer that question. How are you actually doing? Because I know what it's like to have to just do the road. Like, no, I'm cool. I'm chilling. Just one day at a time. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful. I mean, we have responses to the how you doing question that never really give us a space to actually answer that question. We
Mm,
need that. We just need a
that
space
part.
where we can just do that. Yeah.
That part. I feel like there are probably men listening to this podcast who can
Mm,
directly relate to what you're saying right there, right? So
yeah.
especially those moments where someone asks us like how we're doing as men, and how society has, like you said, they postured men to be in this realm of needing to always be okay and to present
Hmm.
themselves as being fine and being strong.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's kept a lot of people suppressing how they
Hmm.
feel. So, I love what you're saying about creating those spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for your insight on that. So, Dr. Abari, the people
Yeah.
need to know who you are, what you do, what you contribute to the field. So, like, let us know.
Um. So I'm clinical and community psychologist. Did my training at Hampton University, then Georgia State in Atlanta, and came back home to Chicago, where I'm from. Really, just to give back and to connect to the people that made me, that created me. I came here from Chicago, from a lot of institutions, African-centered, culture-based institutions, and so a lot of my work merges that upbringing, celebrating Kwanzaa, playing drums, and then going out learning mental health, and now trying to integrate that into the same, what I'm saying, spaces. So I do drum circles. We do comedic yoga for men. I do a lot of stuff with hip hop. So a lot of my work tries to try to bridge that access problem we have. So I love the podcast and the panels and the tweets, and people are talking about mental health in a way that is really, really encouraging.
Right.
But the distance between people saying now I'm open to it and
Mhm.
being able to receive services in it is
Exactly.
wider than I'm comfortable with. And so
Exactly.
a lot of my work is really trying to figure out how to get where people at, and train people like the barbers and the coaches and the fathers to
Love
really
that.
be able to raise their level of emotional intelligence and confidence to be able to hold space to have conversations, to really give the work away, to not
Yeah.
hold on to this expertise because it's capital involved and me being the only one in the city that could do a thing. But I think
Absolutely.
we in a moment we are struggling and suffering. So a lot of my work looks at trying to think about this larger, expanded notions of what healing can look like and where it can happen, and whether we call it therapy or not, right? So I spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's really dope. So I would identify you as like a gap stander, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like being that person in the community and in like clinical psychology
Hmm.
who is trained in these interventions. Therefore, I can provide these interventions that y'all are
Yeah.
talking about, that can help to kind of close this gap between, as you stated, like the intervention versus like just having the discussion about it and being
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Can
real.
you go ahead? I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying that's real. That the gap standard. I
Yeah, yeah,
receive
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay. And so for the people who don't know, can you explain to us like what a community psychologist is and how is that different from a clinical psychologist?
Hmm. Great question. So community psychology as a field was born out of really a lot of clinical psychologists that were doing work and were kind of frustrated with the level of impact that we were able to
Hmm.
have. Just the idea that if you even the best therapy, if you just do one-on-one therapy one at a time and you give people the medicine that they need, whether it's psychotropic or whether it's breathing, and then you get them to think better and to navigate the system better, but then stick them right back into a community that's broken, then you'll
Hmm.
be spinning your wheels. And so community psychology as a
Yeah.
field looked at those broader levels of influence: communities, schools, politics, structures,
Yeah.
right? Like societal values, those things, how those things impact individual functioning, and try to intervene at that level. So it's very much like sociology or public health, where we have broader scopes, but we spend more time not just sort of analyzing, but really trying to change things, social
Right.
change, in
Right.
ways. So,
I love that you're doing that though, because you specifically being a black man,
mhm.
right? Because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
as though your interventions are probably, well, not probably, they are different in that you're of the culture. Therefore,
yeah,
you know what we need, you know what
right,
we
right.
respond well to. So I know you say you do work with like hip hop and
Hmm.
your, you know, all those things. Like I want you to kind of like talk about especially your work with AB Psy in Chicago. I think
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
the president. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
what's that
the
been like?
president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists. Is a local chapter
Hey,
of a national organization that for 50 plus years has been investigating this question. What does mental health for Black folk mean specifically?
yes.
Because we hear, I got a PhD in white psychology. You have to learn Freud, Skinner, and Watson, and had to read a bunch of old white men to help learn what the healing looks like and how to define people. But and I couldn't go back to Chicago with that. That did not help me do the healing that's needed on the south side and the west side of my city. And in a large part, my analysis looks at what the harm was done, and part of that was removing us from our culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if I understand that
Wow.
slavery was the trauma, then what do we lose during slavery has to be a part of the treatment. We have to regain, we have to reinstate those things that were taken from us because that's where the power in the medicine was. So I can't go to America to solve a problem that they caused, right? I can't
That's
use
so good.
these theories if that's the thing that created the sickness and the trauma in the first place. So, ABSI is an organization that's really guided me a lot towards understanding the richness of medicine in Africa and
Yeah.
African rituals and principles and values and understandings, and that being the center of what psychology means for me. So we've been, studying what does it mean to be human for thousands of years, right? The 1619 moment was a blip in the radar,
Mm-hmm.
but we got to go back to look at those things that we lost. Like we didn't lose them, like we forgot. Like it was removed from us. It was
Mm-hmm.
stomped out of our memory, and so that trauma has to be restored through the culture. Like it's got to. It's not a fringe thing. It's not an alternative thing. It's at the center of what healing looks like. Reconnecting us back to ourselves and the cultural aspects of it are central to my work.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm also a member, a product of AB Sci, so I directly,
Nice, nice.
yes, I love AB Sci since 2017. I've been a member while I was in grad
Mm,
school.
okay.
Um, so it's been an amazing experience, and I can really attest to what you're saying. Like, yeah, we learned about white psychology in
Hmm.
school, but when it comes to being in DC, like I can't go into
Hmm.
a room and like implement Freudian's
Yeah,
perspective, right? So,
right,
so
right.
you know, being able to kind of be culture centered and
Yeah,
acknowledging what helps for our people in terms of
yeah.
you know, how we function and what helps us, like that's important. That's why I think there's definitely a need for more Black psychologists, like
Hmm.
people
And
of
not
the
just like
culture.
black faced, right? Not just
Yeah.
black looking, but like black through and through at the
Oh,
foundation. So,
can you talk about that difference? Can you go a little bit
I
further?
mean, so like even if you just focus on race here in America, a racial analysis just has us thinking about what white people did to us. We were
Yeah.
responding to slavery and to Jim Crow and to redlining and to police brutality. But culture and being black philosophically, being having black analysis, reading black books,
Hmm.
having black art in your space, not just having black skin so you can fill a
Right.
quota. That's what I mean. The difference is that some people just look black and connect to whiteness, right? They have been trained in the same ways that we've all been trained in,
Yeah.
but at their value system, at their core, they define success by their proximity to whiteness, white things, white people,
Hmm.
white systems, and that person could do more harm than good if you don't really know
Wow.
where they're coming from and what their intentions are.
Mm. Dr. Obari, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about that. Like
Mm,
that's such a powerful concept. I was talking to my homegirl, Dr. Afia, and she was saying like
mm,
there's a
mhm.
difference
Yeah,
between being a Black psychologist and being a psychologist who centers Blackness,
yeah,
right?
that's right,
And
right.
you know, it's a huge difference between that. So I love how you're bringing that out and highlighting the importance of being a Black psychologist who centers Blackness in order to
Hmm.
provide that healing to our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear how you got into the work of, you know, hip hop and mental health, and you're an expert in that. So I thought you were the perfect person to talk about this documentary we're going to dive into. But yeah, tell us about
Well,
that.
it was really early in the training in my career that I realized there wasn't a lot of black men doing therapy in the field.
Mhm.
And so every time I would go to a center, they would give me the boys. That would be all my work. I would just have young black men
Yeah.
caseloads filled day in, day out. And so from that, I wrote a book for young black men about manhood and relationships. And then from that, I would get called to come to schools and do like assemblies and come talk. And
Love it.
and it was very quickly also that I realized that I couldn't just come in lecturing or just,
Mhm.
what I'm saying, with my bullet points and my PowerPoints. I had to be engaging in a way that was responsive to their culture, to their needs. And music was just the easiest way to do that.
Yeah.
So I would go in and ask them what they're listening to and what they like about it. And we print out lyrics and we would dissect it line by line and talk about the images and talk about the industry itself and talk about
Hmm.
the messages in the music. And there's lots of mental health themes in most of the music that you're listening to, good,
Absolutely.
bad, or ugly. And so I just started to use hip hop more and more and created a curriculum out of it.
Yeah.
So I got a 12-unit rites of passage curriculum that's hip hop based, was full of music and I use contemporary artists, the stuff that they're listening to, stuff I critique, stuff that I like, stuff that I don't like, and just
Mhm.
use hip hop as a way to facilitate conversations. It's
Yeah.
just full of words and the rhythm. It connects to the African center stuff that I'm into too. So
Mhm.
the drums is at the root of it. Storytelling is a very old, ancient African practice. The
Yep.
old tradition is ours, and so hip hop is just a new format for a very old African way of thinking and being. And so
Hmm.
it allows me to sort of connect to who we are in a way that's authentic to me, to us, and to the young people that I'm working with.
I love that. I love that. So let me ask you this. So, well, first of all, are you like a artist as well? Like, do you?
Yeah, I used to write a little bit.
Okay.
I used to do more like spoken word. In my brain, I'm a rapper. I'm black men freestyle in the shower, right? And so, but I never really took it nowhere. But I'm a avid, what I'm saying, fan. I'm a lover of hip hop. I'm a lover of words and sound, and I
Nice.
go to a lot of live music. I go to a lot of open mics. So I'm I'm a I come at it from a position of like loving the thing
Nice.
and being able to critique it from the inside
Right.
because hip hop is a different thing than what pop music is, which I think
Hmm.
is what happens when corporations try to capitalize off of something that's beautiful and powerful, which has happened to hip hop over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. And even hearing you kind of like talk about it, right? So
Hmm.
I love how you talked about hip hop and rap. Basically, it's highly correlated with ancient African practice of storytelling, right? So
Yeah.
telling our story through
Hmm.
song, through music. Um, Oftentimes, like when I'm listening to a song or what have you, I have to turn my clinician ears off. Like, oh wow, this sounds
Yeah,
like
yeah,
trauma narrative a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
I'm wondering, like, do you have those experiences? And if so,
No, I
like,
keep it on. I keep the
okay.
clinician on so that I can talk about it. Because what we're doing in the room is if I'm getting to build a relationship with young people, one on one or groups, and then they're telling me that they in their real life are struggling with addiction or
Mhm.
parents that have been locked up for it or violence they've experienced or all the things that are the sort of the themes that are popular in hip hop. And
Yeah,
then they put on a song. I was like, who you listen to? Who you like? And they play a song and it has those trauma narratives in it.
yeah,
Now we get to have that discussion. Like, what do you mean you like? What do you like about that? What do you like the way that it impacted you? Like, there's a
mhm,
disconnect between how we enjoy things that have harmed us. And so hip
yes,
hop just give me a lens into that conversation.
love that.
Um, but I'll always do it from the perspective of the industry of the I like to go look up the CEOs of the companies that are promoting the labels. I like
Oh,
to
really?
find out like who's in charge. So
Yeah.
they'll tell me who they're listening to, and I say, okay, let's find out who his boss is,
Mhm.
and now we can talk about this broader conversation about the narrow scope of who he is as an artist that gets represented in the music, but if you look at his real life, the themes that he's really into don't show up in the music. If he's talking just
Mhm.
popping pills and gunplay, and if he's talking money, but in real life, he got kids, he's married, he got a grandmother, he's lost people from COVID. Like, what's the
Right.
disconnect between the performance of this art form through the corporate system that's been sort of co-opting
Mhm.
it, and what is the actual true nature of what it means to be black male in America?
Right.
And what are the ways that hip hop can help us, and what are the ways that it can block us from being able to see ourselves as full human beings? So I pay very, very close attention to
I
the
love
lyrics
that.
for that.
I love that perspective. So I've never done that. Like I've never
Hmm.
looked into like who the president of the record company is, and
Yeah, yeah,
I think you provided some good insight for me there as a clinician and how I can move forward and like
yeah.
working with
Hmm.
teenagers and such. I will say so when I was in prior to me moving to DC, I did my internship in Philly. And
Okay.
so, if you know anything about Philly rappers, you can't say
Hmm.
anything about Meek Mill to any
Hmm.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
millennial teenager, nobody.
Right.
So the teens on my unit in the inpatient hospital, they love Meek. So I
Yeah.
use that to my advantage. Like we would have
Hmm.
groups and kind of dissecting
Hmm.
his album. It was called Traumatized. His album
Hmm.
was called Traumatized,
Yeah.
and dissecting some of those trauma narratives. And
Yeah.
it can be very powerful. It can be such a powerful tool because like you said, like as Black people, like we strongly connect to music and
Yeah.
storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really impressed with a lot of the younger rappers. Like they
Mhm.
have a lot of really in valuable, insightful, and honest content. Right? They
Mhm.
got stuff that I don't like, right? But I can always find a song or two where they're really talking about the pain that they experienced and the trauma.
Mhm.
And so we get to look at all of it. We get to see the full
Yeah.
scope of who a person is. And when a rapper does it, it gives the boys in the room permission to say, okay, well, you're right. I've been through some stuff too.
Yeah.
It makes it less taboo to hear someone you look up to also say that they've been through some things that you can
Yeah.
connect with.
It normalizes it, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
that's so important, especially when working with younger kids. That's so
Hmm.
important.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hop into the documentary.
Kanye,
Um,
yes. Such
so I
a
was
fascinating
transparent with you.
character.
Uh-huh.
He's so fascinating to me. It's such a like you can't even keep your eyes off of him. He's such a whirlwind. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like every day there's a new
Yeah.
conversation about Kanye, which is such
Yeah.
a testament to his I don't know the gravitational pull that he
Right.
is. So yeah,
Well,
let's talk about it.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, you got it.
I was gonna say, so when you saw this documentary, did that
Hmm.
kind of bring anything into perspective in terms of like what we see now and how he kind of
I
functions?
did. I did learn a lot. I learned a
Okay.
lot, and I've been following him. I'm from Chicago,
Mhm.
so he's a hometown hero. And
Yeah.
College Dropout came out when I was 24, so it wasn't like foundational to me for my identity and my manhood. But I
Okay.
was a fan. I am a fan, right? But being able to peer into the intimate day to day, like the process of him becoming himself.
Right.
was very, very enlightening. Like we almost didn't have a Kanye. Like he really willed himself into existence in a way that was very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people walked away with that. Like a lot of people have projects or ideas or things that we want to put out into the world.
Hmm.
But there's so many points in which if he did not just force his way through, we wouldn't even be talking about him right now. So
Exactly.
like he really just created a lane for himself in a way that made me go back to like, man, am I working hard enough? Like, have I taken some no's that have dinged me and disappointed me in ways that I've
Mhm.
given up or not pushed hard? I mean, like it made me. It was inspirational to look at the nitty gritty of the grind that he had, the
Yeah.
belief in himself, his confidence, and how if the proof has been in the pudding. He really did the thing that he said he was going to do by hook or crook, as the old people say.
He did. No, he definitely did. And you being a Chicago native, like I'm wondering, uh, what's the vibe like right now in Chicago? Like, what y'all celebrating this
Mm,
documentary? Like, what are you?
I mean, everybody knows somebody that knows somebody, so we like seeing our friends in the documentary, and
Okay.
we see people we know. So we reminiscing because we know where he's at. You know what I'm saying? We when you come back to Chicago, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then you go down your own memory, like I remember where I was when that was happening. So that kind of stuff is happening. Like people are saying that we appreciate seeing the story
Nice.
because right now it's hard to rock with him sometimes. Like he makes himself hard to be a fan of.
Yeah.
But then the documentary gives us as people who are trying to root for him a little bit more sympathy.
Right.
So I'm feeling that in the city. I'm feeling like we're like, okay, we can try to be a little bit more patient because we saw this
Yeah.
process in real time through the documentary. So I think it's been helpful for that, just for some compassion around him, who he
Yeah.
is, and some understanding more.
I can even relate to that.
Mm,
Because I will say when some of the things that we see
yeah,
that he does, like it's hard to be empathetic
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah, yeah,
right? As
yeah.
a
It
human,
is.
as a
Yeah.
human, right? But I think watching this documentary and some of the very basic human emotions that he was vulnerable
Mhm.
with, like on screen,
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
allowed me to see, like, okay, I get that. I can
yeah,
connect with him in this way, right?
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think, yeah, I think that was just very powerful in the way in which they conveyed that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No,
So
it's
you agree with me? That's cool.
yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. And so like so I was transparent with you. I said I did half my homework. I didn't do all of it. And
Hmm.
in that I'm not finished the series yet. But what I did see, and also kind of like doing research on different articles and reviews on this,
Hmm.
people kind of labeled his journey as like a quest for recognition,
Hmm.
right? So like
Yeah.
just going from place to place, and even like seeing how he would play his music in a room full
Hmm.
of people at Rockefeller Records or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
and they would just like disregard him, like having
Yeah,
full-blown conversations, and he just
yeah, yeah,
watching him walk away so defeated.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that just kind of like struck something for me. So I'm wondering, like, for
Hmm.
you, just in watching that, like, did that kind of put things in a perspective in terms of how we see Kanye, in terms of his the confidence that we see now?
Hmm.
As a yeah, I'll let you go
It
first.
did put in perspective. And we use confidence with him a lot, and I like confidence. I mean, you
Yeah.
see it in the documentary. You see that he knew he was a star, and so he was gonna
Hmm.
be that until we recognized it, until people sort of gave him that stamp of approval. I think it's hard to live a life like that, right? To always have your sense of self be dependent upon the validation of other people. Like
Oh,
that's not a place that I can stay for long, right?
wow.
Um, but I think that what was important about watching him do it was being able to distinguish a type of confidence that also, people say confidence, some people say arrogance, and they have a different tone for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but the confidence had a lot to do with a a vulnerability
Hmm.
and insecurity that you don't see until you watch it, uh, you know, front to back.
Right.
Um, and so there's a thirst, there's a neediness, there's a codependence upon the applause
Mm.
that I think has a lot of unhealthiness that is the dark side of
Yeah.
confidence, right? But we want people to feel good about themselves. Like I got
For sure.
children, I got boys. I want them to feel good about themselves.
For sure.
I don't want them to need even my approval for them to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Right. I want them to have it. I want them to know I love them. I care about them, through and through. But if I'm busy, right, or if I don't get to acknowledge a beautiful thing they did, like I want them to still be okay without that.
Mm.
And that's a different type of confidence. So there's a
It is.
confidence that says I'm going to be okay regardless. I love myself whether they love me or not.
Hmm.
And it's just a different type of confidence. I think it sits in a different place. And,
Yeah.
I long for that, for him, for people, to be able to know you got something that's special and push it and sell it and market it, but not depend on that, not rely on that for your sense of well-being. So I had some sadness about that, right?
Yeah.
I'm proud of him. I'm inspired by him, but I'm sad.
Mhm.
I was also sad about that
Yeah.
part.
And I think that's the part that should be highlighted too, right? So,
Hmm.
because I had the same sentiments when I was watching as well. Like as a clinician, always having my
Hmm.
clinician hat
Hmm.
on. On the one hand, I was inspired. I'm like, wow, I can connect in that way.
Yeah.
From an emotional level, but also I'm noticing that there is this um he was constantly addicted to that praise
Hmm.
and kind
Yeah.
of like seeking for other people to see his value.
Yeah.
And I think even for people listening to this podcast, if we go throughout life, like Dr. Obari was saying, like if we go throughout life constantly seeking that validation, constantly
Hmm.
seeking for somebody to see us as we want them
Hmm.
to see us,
Yeah.
we're going to be let down over and
Yeah.
over again.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw in his
It's a
document.
never-ending quest. There's no end to that.
Exactly.
There's always going to be somebody else to please if that is the
Right.
thing that you're anchored yourself on.
Exactly. Because right now it's using Kanye for instance, like I need a record deal. After the record deal, okay, I need a
Hmm.
Grammy. After that,
Yeah,
like
that's
it's
right,
gonna
right,
it's
right,
gonna always be something.
right, right.
And
Especially if what you're chasing is the illusion of power and success that white people have given the world, because
they don't
that's
know
not real
about that.
either. They not even like happy for real. Like the power and domination that they've amassed and have to also feed for themselves
Mm,
is something that he's chasing. He's not even chasing black excellence. He's chasing Disney and Elon Musk and like I don't want to be no Elon Musk. That would be. There's no point in my career that I desire to have a million white people clap for me.
mm,
If that happened, I would be nervous about that. I would like, man, I've gotten off track. That would be closer to failure than success to me. To have
mm,
a bunch of auditorium of white people paying money to hear what I got to say. If I'm saying something that white people that comfortable with, they want to come cheer me. I need to reassess, right? And so just that very definition of what good is, of
yeah,
what valuable is, it was also distorted in
mm,
his story in a way that like is a different danger too. So
right.
not even just a generic applause, but like seeking validation from white people. And if you keep watching it, the third episode, you see it even clearer where he does something even different than what I would consider code switching. Like he has a real clear white voice. Like
Oh
when he
wow.
got white people around, his whole tone changed,
Mm,
his demeanor changed. Like he sounds like a real preppy white boy from the suburbs.
mm,
He don't sound like who he saw sound like when he with his boys or when he with Cootie or when he with his family. Like
wow.
he turns into what he thinks the performance for white people needs to be. And again, that's again another never ending a quest for success because it's not, again, the whole thing is an illusion. It's not even real. So I was sad. There was so many things about it that I was sad about that you know um, made me think about not him so much, but us as a society. I feel like Kanye is a mirror for us. Like the reason we can't stop watching him is because we see ourselves in
Mm,
his contradictions. Like he's like the epitome of what an African American community is. Like he's like the microcosm of us for me. Like he's the flashiness, the arrogance, the talent, the genius. We are genius people, right? He
absolutely.
embodies all of
Creative.
it.
Hmm.
We creative, all of that kind of stuff. But like the even the desire to integrate is something that we struggle with,
Yeah.
right? He physically needed to integrate with a white family to be able to feel like he's good enough. Like I think
Mm,
that is the African American dilemma. You can call it a bipolar dilemma, even That's that the poles in which we find ourselves as what Du Bois would call the double consciousness is something that we as a community are wrestling with. And I think that we see that in Kanye's body. We see it in
Mm-hmm.
his words, like in his on one album, in one song, you'll hear very opposite poles of things, and we can connect to both of them because
Yeah.
that's the experience of what it means to be Black in America. Like we in a place that's a crazy make. This place is crazy making, right? To be either well or to be successful or
Yeah.
to stay lay low and just mind your business, whatever you're trying to do, there's no way you can't be influenced by the toxicity of the culture that we in.
Mm-hmm.
And he's transcended that. So he even represents the bipolarness of America, in which that there's we're supposed to be a free country, but we built on the backs of enslaved people. Like this,
Yeah.
that we built on contradiction. And
Yeah.
so he calls it. Here's a song. He has a lyric in one song where he says, "My bipolar is a superpower," right? He's claiming it just proudly. It's not a disorder. He says that it's not a disorder. It's a superpower. And I think that that's something that we can all connect to, where
Yeah.
we all have things about us that we love, things about us that we hate, things we're proud of, things we're ashamed of, and those coexisting contradictions can be met with peace if we have
Mm-hmm.
perspective and balance and community, and we can make some sense of it. It's a meaning making project, what it means to
Right.
be alive, Black, American, all these kind of things. We're trying to make sense of it all. But it could also be conflict. It could be discord. It could
Yeah.
be tension if it's not met with some balance and some perspective. And so I think that we see that. I think that we see him and we see us. And it's easy to point our fingers at him and be like, we need to fix him, or he needs to go back on his meds, or either get
Mm.
rid of him, love him, or hate him. But it's really our attraction to it is us wrestling with that in ourselves as a culture, as Black people, as Americans. And I think that's why we love him and hate him so much, because he polarizes us inside of ourselves.
Ashe, Dr. Obari, Ashe, because no, I really have chills right now. When thinking about like this idea of success,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
like you said, like a lot of people do relate to Kanye because of what he was able to achieve. But like even
Yeah.
thinking about his idea, his concept of success is
Mm-hmm.
very, is viewed from a lens of like proximity to white culture, whiteness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, like, as we continue to dissect this and as we're talking about this, how can we get to a place to where our success is more viewed from a Black perspective and we're pursuing that Black excellence that you talked about as opposed to that mainstream success?
I mean, part of it is really just telling the truth
Yeah.
about who white people are, what they've been, how they've achieved what they've achieved.
Mhm.
It's a very fluff success.
Yeah.
It's built on violence. It's built on dominance. It's built on misinformation and
Mhm.
distortion of information. We should not want to desire to replace them and be on top,
Mhm.
because on top of the system that they've created requires trauma and pain across the world, across the ecosystems. Like their success required is not good for them.
Wow.
Their success is not good for them. They can't sustain the planet based on the success that they've created for themselves. It's not desirable in any way. And
Yeah.
so we need to interrupt the ways in which our children are seeing wellness, success,
Yeah.
prominence, what we give awards to,
And
what we
even luxury.
celebrate,
Yeah.
the luxuries,
Yeah.
right? If you do a vision board with any group of kids, they'll take some magazines up and cut Lamborghinis out. The
Yep.
Gucci belts, right? And we like, oh, good. You can achieve, you can strive for that.
Mhm.
Our best success profits white people, right? The best we could do just giving our money back to the same people that oppressed us. Like there's something really backwards fundamentally about how we see things. And I think we need to have those conversations to unpack the root, the foundation of how we view ourselves.
Wow.
I think psychologists are primed for that. I think that the mental health movement has to be about that, like reshifting consciousness and identity, and not just about coping better and managing and breathing and navigating a sick system. We can diagnose America as bipolar and sick, and the poles don't make sense, and the contradictions are unhealthy, then I can distance my young people's desire to achieve in this way, in this
Mhm.
place, to rise the ranks of this system. If I can say, no, the systems, you don't want that. You want to tear it down, burn it up, create something very, very brand new,
Exactly.
so that we can sustain the earth, our families, so that we can have real peace, so that we can, so the goal isn't a bag, but the goal is like joy, right? We can
Yeah.
redefine the whole thing
Yes.
if we have a different conversations with with ourselves and with our people.
Mm. Dr. Obari, I'm going to take everything that you're saying now, and I'm going to rewatch those first few episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and just take that perspective and kind of really lean into some of these things that you're saying. I certainly enjoyed you, y'all. If you're listening, I'm sure you're probably going to have to listen to this over again, because Dr. Obari was like definitely what we say snatching edges over here in the Dr. Chanda
I appreciate
podcast.
it.
No, it's always a pleasure having other clinicians on here. I certainly enjoyed your perspective, like as a Chicago native and a clinical psychologist.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's lots to unpack. There's so many. I think we
For
need to keep
sure.
having conversations about it. I think that we need to watch the documentary with young people, and
Yes.
to really to use his example as a cautionary tale,
Mm-hmm.
inspiration. I mean, there's so many things that you can draw from it. Um, and you haven't gotten to the place where you really get to see the impact of him losing his mother,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a really important point and conversation piece for us post COVID because we've lost so many people. So
Yes.
have conversations about how to grieve. Every city's dealing with the suicide rates and the gun violence, and we not as a people dealing with grief well enough. And
Yeah.
he did not. He dealt with his grief very, very poorly.
Can you talk
Um,
about that real quick? I know we said we was wrapping up, but can you?
I mean, yeah, real quick. I mean, so you see it in the documentary, his mother dying. You see how close they were. Like it was just,
Yeah.
she was his rock. She was his everything. And when he lost her, um, I suspect this is speculation. I suspect that he didn't properly get to process the aspects of guilt that he experienced by bringing her into his world. And his world was a very flashy, superficial. There was lots of cameras in his world that he saw, but then brought his mother along, which inspired his mother to think about her insecurities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she died from complications of plastic surgery. I think it was a tummy tuck, I heard.
Okay.
Um, and so at some point, there was a woman who was his anchor, who people speak very, very highly of here in Chicago. I was on a panel at Chicago State where she was an English department chair
Mm-hmm.
just last month doing a mental health thing. There was an English professor on there talking about how much she learned from Donda West. Like she was just a powerhouse. And so she has her own reputation, her own legacy in Chicago, particularly at Chicago State, as a writer, as a historian, as an English professor. So she was standing on her own. And
Wow.
then Kanye brought her into a different world, right?
Wow.
That world made her be like, wait, she probably saw herself on camera one day on TV somewhere and was like, maybe I think I might, I don't like the way I look no more.
Mm-hmm.
And so it brings us back to this confidence, but like there's something that's shaky once you immerse yourself in the spirit of white culture, right? There's
Okay.
we call them possessions. I think there's something that happens when you crave stuff, like it really gets at you. Like when
Mm-hmm.
if you don't protect your sphere, your circle, if you don't stay grounded, white people would turn you into something else. The
Mm-hmm.
money will turn you. So like money costs too much
Right.
sometimes if you're not really thinking through. And I think his mother got wrapped up into that world. I
Yeah.
think he feels some guilt from that. And he wasn't able to process it. He went right back to work. He never really dealt with it. If Kanye West became an example, he could do this right now. If he took that same willpower he used to will himself into a career to apply that to his wellness,
Mm-hmm.
we would see a different Kanye West. If he was like,
I
instead of
agree.
trying to find the top designers, the top producers, if he said, I'm going to try to find the top therapists
Yeah.
and you know, give everything I can, everything I got. He got the resources for it. He got the networks for it. He has the willpower to will himself into peace of mind if he decided to do so.
Mm-hmm.
He's wrapped up. He's possessed. I think that he's unraveled in a way because he's craving this attention and
Yeah.
this camaraderie. And people say he needs his meds. I think that he needs, you know, not necessarily to replace his mother, right? You can't replace your mother. I lost my father. I'm not insensitive to what it's like to lose a parent,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody loses their parent. If you do it right, if you live right, we all gonna lose our parents. That's not the thing that should make you lose your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what he represents, again, also for the Black culture, is that we've all lost our mothers. We've lost our mothers spiritually. We've lost our connections to the spiritual traditions of our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost those names of those feminine divine principles that have guided us and kept us whole.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he represents that in a way that can be restored. Like we can fix that. I doubt he has an altar. And I'm saying I don't know, but like I don't hear him talk about reconnecting to those traditions of what our mothers and grandmothers did to make it
Mhm.
through tough times. Like we've been through tough times. He could fix this if he wanted. If he decided
Yeah.
that I wanted to go, full steam ahead and not use the art for capitalism for profit, but use it for wellness and
Right.
just make music just because it feels good, or make clay pots, or go out to Wyoming and dig into the dirt, or surround himself with elder Black women. Right? I'm sure he got some aunties still.
Yeah.
There are people that would adopt him, you know what I mean, that would
Yeah.
just take him under his wing. He has to want that. He has to desire that. And you don't hear nothing about that in his life.
Right.
He's still talking about desiring being close to Trump, or being close to some rich white person, or being something else. But if he got to the level of wanting wellness as much as he wants applause, we see a different Kanye.
Mhm. Wanting wellness as much as he wants applause.
Mm,
Yo, that in itself is powerful. And it kind of brings back what you were saying about that lyric that he had about bipolar disorder.
hmm
And he
hmm
said that that's his superpower.
Yeah.
Um, and a part of me even wonders, like, would he even kind of like do that, right? So like, would he
hmm hmm
pursue wellness in the way in which you're talking about? He needs
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if he sees this as a superpower, whether I often see how like bipolar disorder and even hallucinations, if you will, has
hmm
caused a lot of like patients to feel like, well, this is where I get my creativity,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like these
Yeah.
voices have become my friend.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm not going to take the medication. I'm not going to see a therapist or what have you.
hmm hmm
And I don't, yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, but
And I'm for him taking his medication. I just think we
yeah,
need to expand what medication means. Medication also needs to mean community
that part,
and
yeah,
gardening and breathing and yoga and drums. Like he needs to get back into the root of what the medicine is for us as a people.
yeah,
And I think he could transform lives if he did that. If he became the example for that.
man.
And I think he's doing some of that with the spirits of the Sunday soul sessions.
The
I don't
Sunday
know what they
service,
call them,
yeah,
right? I
mhm,
think he's connecting to Christianity in that way. I think
yeah,
it's really powerful.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I don't know. Imagine him like reading the Bible though. I don't imagine him studying. I think he might need to just read more,
mm,
right? Instead of not outputting, not speaking so much, but just going inside, being more quiet. Just take a break. You need to take a
yeah,
break, like a real
yeah,
break.
yeah,
Um, I think that the unraveling that we see would slow down if he got back to himself and got the people around him that were really
yeah,
like supporting him and not just trying to profit off of him because
right,
of how much money they can make.
right.
So
No,
I'm rooting for my brother. Like I want the best for him. We all watching him. You know what I'm saying? We praying for him. We
yeah,
got resources that if he wants them, they there. He just, you gotta want it. And when he ready,
absolutely.
we'll be here.
At this point, we, like you said, we rooting for him, and we're definitely keeping him in our prayers and our thoughts, and um, just kind of going from that angle. I
Hmm
can't wait to watch the rest of this
Yeah,
documentary.
no, it's good. It's rich.
Oh, Dr. Obari, I definitely appreciate you. Can you let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, I'm on the interwebs. I got a website, www.drobaricartman.com. I'm on Instagram @ocartman1, and Twitter. Facebook, put my name in. I'm pretty easy to find. So
Awesome,
connect. Let's do
awesome.
some work.
Yes. Are you offering any services or anything right now?
I'm been focusing on the curriculum this year,
Okay.
so I'm not doing a lot of individual therapy. But if people have some young men at detention centers, high schools, community centers that you want some content around, systems analysis, historical context, valuing women, I got a bunch of different sort of sessions that we use that we've curated for young men that uses hip hop, that uses video clips, that sort of tailors the conversation to like a TikTok mind, like a very
Mhm.
snippets of information to fast. And so if people are interested in that kind of stuff, those are the services that I'm offering right now.
Nice, nice, awesome. Again, I appreciate you, Dr. Obari.
I appreciate you. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
absolutely. It was definitely a pleasure. And we'll see you guys next time, next Wednesday on the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast. And don't forget, you have the power to create the emotions that you want to experience. All right, y'all, have a good night.